Hello, listeners. My name is Charles Scott. The program you're about to listen to is called Can We Talk? I'm here with
Charles Scott Jr. How you guys doing? Welcome to a new week, and we have a lot to discuss.
Today we're going to talk about landlords and tenants.
Yes.
Previous, we were talking about buying a house, selling a house, how to fix the house up. So today, as promised, we said we're going to talk a little bit about landlords and tenant relations and some of the things that the landlord can do, some of the things that the tenant can do.
Exactly.
And also what's happening with the state of the rental market, what's going on.
Well, I like to say, I talk to people every day about apartments, and people say, oh, yeah, I've lived there before. And I say, was it before COVID? I'll say, yeah. And I'll tell them things have changed. I'll say the whole rental industry, it's still possible to get an apartment, just a lot more, I'll say, not hurdles, but more verification, I'll say, this time around.
Just to give you a little bit about our agency, we're Tri-State Realty. We're a full-service real estate agency in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And right now we see a wave of people coming and going as far as the rental market. A lot of changes in the rental market and a lot of changes in the building and what contractors are doing out there. The big emphasis that we see right now is on building apartments versus building homes, because there's a need for a lot of new construction for apartments.
Yes.
Since the COVID has occurred, a lot of people are now working from home, and the needs and the requirements of an apartment owner have changed also. People are concerned about Wi-Fi, and some apartment buildings that are being built right now, they have different amenities such as gyms, libraries, computer stations. So the way in which you rent an apartment is a lot changed from the way your mother or your father and grandfather rented.
Most definitely. And what you're going to see now going forward, we're going to see, like you said, the modern, I would say, construction of these new apartments. It's just how do you interact with your landlord? What are the rights you have, and what are the rights they have? I talk to people every day, and I teach them, and they're like, wow, I didn't realize I could do that. I'm like, yeah, you have rights. I talk to people that are being evicted. There's certain things that you have to look at in that little book that they give you that could help you in your case.
One of the things that we wanted to talk about, which is important, is the changing way in which apartments are applied for and what landlords are looking for.
Correct.
So if you listen to us on a regular basis, and maybe after this program, if you have a friend or someone that's looking for an apartment, which is about a lot of people out there looking for apartments, go back and review this segment, because we're going to be talking a lot about what are some of the things that you can do to enhance your ability to be able to rent an apartment. Some of the things that used to occur in the past that you used to do in order to get an apartment, and what's going to be required today. And maybe we'll start with in the past. In the past, a lot of landlords didn't have access to technology.
Exactly. Well, as far as background checks and as far as they want to find anything about a court case, they have to actually go to the city hall and look up the records. Not the case anymore.
That's not the case. In the old days, I remember when I started in real estate, a landlord would just, have you go knock on the door, and he'd put a for rent sign in the window. You'd drive around the neighborhood looking for the for rent signs, or maybe check the newspaper, and then you would go and see the landlord, and the landlord would look you over and everything and ask you a couple of questions, and you give him the money, and he'd give you the keys, and you have an apartment.
Hey, in the same day, how about that?
All within the same day.
24 hours.
While you're standing right there, you have an apartment. Or maybe a friend of yours who lived in a 3-family said, hey, the people upstairs are moving out. They go to the landlord and they say, hey, my sister's looking for an apartment. Oh, okay. Or my cousin's looking for an apartment. And they end up renting the apartment, not even take an application.
Not even an application or any background check or anything.
Because back in the old days, really, there was no such thing. Even credit didn't even apply.
Yeah, how about that?
No one checked credit back in the, they say, what's credit got to do with renting an apartment?
You're buying a car, you're renting an apartment. What's the credit got to do with it?
I remember back in the old days, credit didn't really have anything to do with renting the apartment. It's like these ads on TV where you buy a car, it says everybody accepted, nobody rejected. Do you have a pay stub? Do you have a job? You're accepted. You're approved.
Landlord said, you work? Oh, great. Come in.
Here you go. Here's, So, that has a little bit to do with the old. And back in those days most of the apartments were month to month. And, you know, in some cases, they didn't even have a lease.
Yeah, there was no lease. People moved in. And the thing is, nowadays, I mean, we see leases that are like, you know, say, we call like made by lawyers and stuff like that. As far as you look at these leases, you want to make sure you are going to get a good deal. As far as there are certain things in there that can protect you and may harm you.
Like you said, in some cases, I think some of these rental applications are getting to be the same as applying for a house.
Yes.
Some cases easier.
Might be easier to buy a house than get an apartment. You're right.
And we're only telling you this to make you aware of it. Now, if you are in an apartment, you know, we have people come to us that they say, "What? How long have you been living there?" "I've been living there 15 years. I've been living there 20 years. And, you know, I have a nice landlord. He hasn't gone up on the rent that much." And you think about it this way. The landlord owns the house. It's probably paid for, so he doesn't have a big mortgage.
Yep.
And you're like family, and he isn't charging that much rent. So we're here to prepare you that in a lot of cases where the landlord is charging a little rent or a small rent, and he likes you, he's more apt to sell the house than anybody.
Exactly.
He wants to make some money finally. And he said to himself, or the wife said to him, "Hey, Jerry, you know the people down the street, they sold their house for $350,000. And we're only getting $900 a month rent. We'll never make any money on this house."
And what people don't realize, what tenants don't realize, when you have a landlord who doesn't have a mortgage, I mean, when you buy a house, it's public knowledge. You can see what the person, you know, paid for the house and if they have a mortgage or not. People assume it's been 25 years. There is no mortgage on the house. He's being contacted by investors, I would say weekly, through the mail,
daily.
phone call, daily. And at one point, he's going to meet the right investor that gives him an offer he can't refuse and says, "You'll give me that much for this house?" I have to. So at that point, even though your landlord said, "I'm never going to sell," I mean, it's a variable. It could happen.
What happens then is the landlord ends up putting the house on the market for sale. And if you did not have a lease, which a lot of the older tenants do not have leases, it's month to month. Now, the other question is, people ask, well, can someone buy the house? Do I have to move? Well, you don't necessarily have to move. You just have to pay the increased rent if the person goes up on the increase in the rent.
Exactly.
Now, if you don't have a lease, yes, they can go up on the rent. They have to give you notice, though. They just can't come in and say, starting in 2 weeks, you're going to pay a higher rent. So they have to come in, and they have to give you notice that they are going to be increasing your rent. Usually it's a 30-day notice.
I would say 30 days. They give you to the next month.
So the next cycle. So now you know the rent is going up. Now you can say, "Yes, I will pay that," or if you say no, then they can start an eviction unless it's an exorbitant amount, and then you want to challenge it. But remember, if you don't pay it and he starts an eviction, now that's on your record.
Exactly.
So it's a win-lose situation where you may go to court and the judge may say, "Well, that's a lot of rent. You have to phase it in," but at the same token, now you have on your record that the landlord served you an eviction notice.
Exactly.
So you end up winning the case and losing the war because
that's true. That's a good example.
Because that's not good.
Exactly. Because what's going to happen is now when you go to look at other apartments, people don't realize some of these landlords use what they use like a software. It scans your name. It looks up whether you have any court cases, or you can just go on the CTGov website and see it, and they're going to see something initiate an eviction.
Yes, for many of the tenants out there, and all landlords, you can go to a website called a judicial court, JUD.gov. And with JUD.gov, you can go there and you can look up and you can see all of the different evictions, all of the people that were brought to court. And if you get your name on there, then what happens is your name gets put on there and it stays on there. So you want to make sure that you don't get put on that website, because if someone comes to us and they want to rent and a landlord gives us an agreement to rent the apartment out, one of the first things we do is we check that website to see if anyone has any evictions.
Correct.
All of the paperwork you fill out is on there. In other words, if you go into court, if you decide that the landlord is unfairly evicting you, and you file out an answer, everything you write, everything you do is recorded and put on that website, a copy. There's no privacy.
And it's in your handwriting too.
It's
How
your
about
handwriting,
that?
and you signed it. Sometimes people may say, well, my landlord put me out for no reason, or he started an eviction for no reason. And, I had been paying him the rent, and I can't understand why this is happening. But when you go on the website, it might say in that person's handwriting, yes, I understand that I'm behind on the rent. Yes, I am going to try to catch up on the rent. You will have all of your money by a certain date. And if you don't have your money by that certain date, then I understand that you can start an eviction. And that person signed it. And then there's another form, because if you didn't have the money by that date, then the landlord goes back into court and says, this is the agreement, but this person did not abide by the agreement.
Exactly.
So now when I'm reading this, the person comes back to the office, and I said, you said that you had paid everything on time. I said, here's a copy of a letter that you wrote to the landlord, and the copy that you gave to the court saying that you would catch up and that you were behind and you realized that, and you did not do that. And then he served you again and you didn't show up. And they go, oh.
They say, how do you get that?
How'd you get that?
They don't realize it's all public knowledge.
And I'm saying, it's not me saying that. You signed
the paperwork.
Here's the paperwork. Here, I printed that out. Here, you can take it with you. You have a copy at home. You just told me something else.
And now it's as simple as that. That's when you realize when you apply these apartments, they can easily look this information up. And I would say they may not be as thorough as me and my father. They will see your name on that site and they say, okay, no more. Move on to the next tenant.
Right.
So,
at least I will call you in and I will have to explain what
go
happened.
through it.
Why did this happen? What's going on? I'm looking for some kind of reason that I can talk to the landlord to convince the landlord that you're a good person. And, things happen, bad things happen to good people.
Exactly.
Maybe there was an illness. Maybe there was a divorce. Maybe you lost your job. Maybe things happened that were beyond your control, and now things are on a good foot. You're paying, you have money, you have a good job. So if I can tell the landlord and show this to the landlord, then it will help get you into an apartment.
Exactly.
But for you to just out and out lie and say none of these things happened, when not only did they happen, your signature is there and you agreed.
You agreed that they happened.
That it happened. Now that makes it kind of tough.
Yes.
And usually what happens is when you make that answer, you have an opportunity to state what the problem was or what you dispute.
Exactly. Now, another thing when it comes to apartments, we covered a little bit of this last week, but pets. I'm coming across a lot of people with dogs, and I'll say bigger dogs, smaller dogs, cats, animals, and I'm running into a lot of landlords that want to charge for this, whether it be a yearly fee, or I even seen monthly fees for certain animals. Imagine paying $40 per month per dog you had. That's 2 dogs, that's $80 a month.
Even a dog has to apply for rent.
How about that? That's a good one. Even your animal has to be verified.
And the thing about it is that, years ago, you'd walk up and down the street, you see everybody with a leash, everybody's got dogs, they got pets, they got animals. And what has happened is that, the bad people make it hard for the good people.
That's what it is.
Because they poop all over the place, they leave all of it everywhere. And now the landlords, just today, we had a landlord, and the landlord was, we convinced the landlord to take pets.
Yes.
And we were able to convince the landlord that she would take small dogs, so many pounds, and a cat. Because she said, I've had all this bad experience and all the calls that I got in the past, a tenant complaining about the first floor tenant having a dog and poop all over the backyard. They go stepping in the poop and bring it into their house and all of this. And she said, I'm not about to leave and go all the way over there and clean up the doggy poop in the backyard.
Oh, yeah, she told me. We convinced her.
She was totally against pets.
Yeah.
So we said, look, how about, a small pet? So now she's willing to go with a small pet, as long as they clean up after the dog, and then also, a cat. And then another landlord just last week, remember we were able to convince her, she said a kitty cat.
Yep, she didn't want no kitty.
No kitty, she want no kitty cats, none.
And the thing is because they've had bad experiences in the past. For example, that landlord said the cat in the previous tenant had scratched the walls up, did damage to the wooden floors. So, just a matter of a responsible pet owner.
So this is one of the reasons why. Now, if you've been in your apartment for, let's say, 15, 20 years, and like I said, you get along with the landlord and you have a dog and you have a cat, and you think it's just that easy to go out and find another apartment, well, now all of a sudden the pet can hinder. A lot of people actually end up having to, I spoke to another young lady and she said, well, yeah, I have a pet, a small dog, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to give it to my grandmother to take,
That's what I hear.
to take
Give it to
care
another
of.
relative.
So, it's unfortunate, but, you have situations. And now I'm waiting for the question out there, and I'm going to put it out there. Can they do that? Can they say I can't have an apartment if I have a pet? I heard my girlfriend, or I heard that my cousin,
Oh, yeah.
he had a dog and a pet, and they were able to get an apartment. Well, now we're going to get onto the other subject. There's such a thing as, what do you call it?
Emotional support animals and service animals. Two
Service
different
animals.
categories. Yes.
They're not considered pets.
Yeah.
There's a differentiation between the word pet and the word animal.
Yeah, very
As
true.
If you consider it a pet, that's something like you have as an option, just because you want to, pet.
Yeah.
But emotional support animal, this is something that has to do with your mental character. You make you feel good.
Anxiety, lowers that, makes you feel happy.
A landlord cannot reject you if you have an emotional support animal, and it's verified by a certificate from a doctor or a facility.
Exactly.
But you have to have the certificate
You have to have that.
stating that this animal, dog, cat, whatever it may be, could be a bird, could be parrots.
Oh, yeah.
Are-
Lizard, hamster.
necessary for your support and mental ability. Now, what happens is that certificate, you have to answer a series of questions. I'm not a doctor,
Yep.
but there's all sorts of different facilities that have different requirements. And after you talk to them and after they evaluate, whatever the question is you give, they will give you a certificate saying that this animal, the dog, is necessary for your mental stability.
Now remember, the certificate is step one, but a landlord can still request more information because if it's really legit, they would want a doctor's note saying what's the exact reason. Same thing with service animals.
So that's the reason why. And sometimes you'll say, well, they can't reject you if you have an animal. They can unless it's a support animal.
Yeah.
You see that happen a lot where, like even with the airplanes and the flights.
Oh, yeah.
You can't take animals on, or dogs or cats. However, if you got the certificate saying that it's a support, you can take that individual animal
On the plane with you.
onto the plane with you. So that's the other thing also that landlords are looking at is how big is the animal.
Yes.
I mean, if you're coming in and you have a little Chihuahua, or what's that,
Yorkies.
Yorkie, the tiny little
Toy poodles, they call
toy
them.
poodle.
Yeah.
Now, if you're coming in with a
Pit bull or anything bigger.
3-foot pit bull weighing 350 pounds, that's going to cause some problems.
But the thing is, that can still be classified as emotional support animal, just you have to have the right documentation.
And here's another reason why with the landlords, they're very nervous about having, a dog or a cat. When you bring this, when a landlord allows you, let's say for example, the landlord allows you to have a dog on the premises. Now here comes the mailman. The mailman comes up the walk, and out of the clear blue sky, the dog jumps up out of the bushes and bites the mailman.
Exactly.
So now, the landlord is responsible. Not you as a tenant. Yes, the tenant is responsible, but the landlord is also responsible for allowing the tenant to have the dog in the first place.
Exactly.
Now, both people get sued. Who do you think, whose insurance company is going to pay?
How about that?
In many cases, the tenant doesn't have insurance. That's another class we can talk
Yeah,
about. Something that tenants can buy insurance for their apartment.
Yeah.
But I'd say 95% of them don't.
We'll bring that up right after we cover this. That's a great thing to talk
Right,
about.
talking about insurance for your apartments.
But people don't realize when you have a landlord, they have a house, they have a mortgage, they have what they call homeowners insurance to cover things like fire. I would say, let's say someone slips in front of the house, a dog bites the mailman. Most likely it's going to come off of their insurance, and it's going to go up. Their principal's going to go up. Their rates.
Right. So what happens is that if the dog bites the mailman sues, the homeowner's insurance has got to pay.
Yep.
You got to pay for the medical bills. You know how many rabies shots they got to get? They're going to get 200-300 shots. He gets time off from work. He's got to go to the hospital, emergency room. If he's got permanent scarring, it can run into the thousands and thousands of dollars. Now, what happens with the insurance? Now, naturally, the insurance is going to go up, and the insurance company may require that the tenant get rid of the animal, because it's a hazard, or the landlord's policy is going to have an addendum where there's a pet or an animal there, and the insurance is going to skyrocket for the homeowner. So the homeowner has a liability there that he's nervous and scared in case something were to happen. So it's not just as simple as, well, you know, what difference does it make to the landlord? It makes a big difference, to the landlord. So you have to consider this when you were going out to get an apartment. And with a lot of these new apartments that are being built, you know, these are not like the regular 2 or 3 families. Individuals are not, investors are not building 2 or 3 families anymore.
Oh, no. A lot of, 1 bedrooms I'm seeing.
1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and high rises.
High rises.
So can you imagine, here it is, you have a dog up on the 15th floor, and you know, you got to get on the elevator, okay? Yep. You're on the elevator with 25 other, people up. The elevator's going up and down. Now here you are holding on to your pet. The pet's getting claustrophobic. You know, he's like, who are all these people coming in this elevator, squeezing me in here?
Might just bite somebody.
Somebody might step on his toe.
Yep.
He's going to react. He's like, get off my toe. He's going to take a chunk out of somebody.
Very true.
And there's nowhere to go. Ain't like the person can run. So, or just the fear. Some people may, so what we're basically saying is that, I like pets, but there's just things that you have to take into consideration, common sense, that it makes it more difficult to get an apartment when you will have a pet.
Very
so
true.
Consider possibly buying a house, number one. Or even if you, rent a house, there's still that concern that the people that rent you the house, they're going to be asking you questions. So that in itself, what we just told you here, is going to have a lot of bearing on the pet people out there, and also the landlords, because there's rules that landlords can take that abide by them as far as abide by the tenants at the same time.
Now, I was not to interrupt you, but I was going to say that is an important thing we mentioned a few moments ago, is renter's insurance. People don't realize, I'll say 99% of renters don't have renter's insurance, just because it's such a valuable asset to have. And it's cheap, it's very affordable. I would say a lot of people's car insurance, call your car insurance provider. They actually might have a rental plan at a discount if you bundle it with your car insurance. But that's going to help you in the long run, whether, for example, there's a fire. Let's say there's a fire. I mean, I've seen people that experience this. They go to the Red Cross, and Red Cross can give you clothing and a little bit of shelter. But if you had an insurance policy, they'll put you in a hotel for a week or however long your policy dictates. Even your stuff that's covered, whether it be electronics, TVs, clothing for your children. If you have a renter's policy, you can get the right policy to cover all these damages. And that's just one instance, fire.
Well, what you're talking about, in many cases, a lot of the newer landlords are requiring
How about
that the tenant have a renter's policy. And you have to add the landlord's name to the renter's policy. If you have a loss, the landlord doesn't get anything. All that the policy does is, if you don't pay the premium and it gets canceled, the landlord is notified. Because you agree to keep the policy. So what's to say you pay for 1 month, the next month you cancel it. So a renter's policy covers you for many things. A renter's policy is very affordable. In many cases, $20 a month, maybe even less.
Even less than that.
That renter's policy can cover you for, in case somebody gets hurt in the apartment, in case somebody steals something from the apartment,
water damage,
in case you have water damage, in case you are traveling on the highway, you stay at a hotel and somebody steals something out of the hotel, if a fire occurs in the apartment, anything stolen, items stolen out of your car.
People don't realize it extends not just inside your apartment.
Wherever
you go.
So do yourself a favor, if you're listening to this program, or tell your friends, get a renter's policy.
Yes.
You don't have to own the house to be covered for renter's insurance could cost you as little as $20 a month
Very
or
true.
less.
Or less than that.
And how many times you see a fire, the people are taken in by the Red Cross, and they're
Yes.
put up somewhere. And like my son said, the insurance will pay for a hotel room. Maybe your apartment won't be ready for another 2 or 3 months.
Exactly.
And it covers everybody in your household. So you want to look into getting a renter's policy to cover you.
Exactly. And you want to study it anyway because you may find that dream apartment that requires you to get that. So why not have that already ready to go?
And it follows you.
It follows
So
you.
if you get it for one apartment and you move to another apartment, you could take the insurance with you to another apartment.
Exactly.
And here's even a better bonus. When you get the renter's policy, you get a discount because you're bundling. You get a discount on your car insurance. You get a discount on the renter's policy. So you, depending on how much you're paying for the car insurance, it may cost you pennies to be covered all the way around. So
Exactly.
these are some of the tips that we tell you. These are some of the ideas that we give you. I know I have a lot of people that listen to this program, and they say, "Hey, I was listening to your program. There's some good ideas that you're giving out there. Every week I listen to
Yeah.
it." So tune in every week. You know, we're on YouTube. We're on Facebook, TikTok. We have a series. You know, look at some of the past episodes. They're not dated. You know, we talk about different subjects every week that can help and benefit you.
Yes, I would say if you go back and watch every episode, I would say a lot of free information. We're just letting the public know, like, this is what you don't need to know, is what you should know, because you're gonna have an advantage over a lot of, whether it be renting or buying property.
Right. We have to do it renting, buying. Sometimes we talk about the economy.
Oh, yes.
What's happening with interest rates, what's happening with the government, how it affects you, how inflation, how it affects your money. So it's a wealth of information and knowledge. And, you know, we read a lot of publications and we study a lot of different sites to come in. And it's every week we come up with new information pertaining to real time. What's
Yes.
happening today? What's happening last week? Some of the times we even talk about what might happen in the future.
Yes, exactly.
And we've been fairly accurate.
I would say so.
See?
A couple right
I
predictions.
get a couple off, but you know,
Definitely.
hey, it's better to try it than not to try at all.
Exactly.
So, you know, but you know, we're out here to try and help you and benefit you. So,
Yes.
you know, just tune in on the different episodes and tell your friends about us.
All right, and in closing, I just want to say one more thing. Remember, Time to Own program is in effect. Give us a call.
Free money to buy a
money
house.
to buy a house, down payment, and closing costs. And we've had several closings using the program. We have
Free
experience.
money, state of Connecticut. Free
Yes.
money to buy a house. Remember
Definitely.
that.
Time to Own.
So
In
until
closing-
next week, God bless.
Amen.